So it's back, the SU16 Tactical that was sent off on warranty, and in this video we're going to be looking at what they did to it. My name is Murray and you're watching 3Bar Deep Videos. So back in the early spring of 2018, me and the girlfriend were out shooting this rifle, which belongs to a buddy of mine, and we had the rear of the receiver breakout on it. And so later on into June of that year, I contacted the company in which we bought this rifle from, and they relayed me to the warranty center, which is called Vault Distributions. They're based out of BC, here in Canada. The warranty center for Kel-Tec rifles. And I contacted them and they said, yeah, send us your rifle and we'll address the issue. So before I did that, I released a video where I went in depth kind of looking at what exactly broke on this gun and reasons as to why it might have happened and possible solutions. And so for those of you who have come across this video and you haven't seen that first video, I'm going to go ahead and throw in a link right now that you can click that'll take you there, and I definitely invite you to watch that before you watch this because you'll be more in the loop as to what exactly happened. As for this video, this is going to be a follow-up video to that. So it's going to be basically me discussing what happened next. So after that video ended, I proceeded to strip down the rifle to just the upper pretty much to ship off to the warranty center. I did contact the warranty center to ask them if that was okay, and they said yeah, you can go ahead and do that. And the reason for this is me and Laughing Man, the guy who owns this gun, we did enough modifications to the lower portion of this gun and other parts that we didn't really want to send the whole gun as is off to the warranty center because we feared that that would just cause a lot of confusion in the sense of what they should send back and vice versa. Like, we didn't want to have the warranty guys be fiddling around taking the Zuckerov rail off and things like that. So I shipped the rifle off to the warranty center, and pretty much a month went by and I didn't hear anything back from. So sometime in August I did call them to see what was up and if they even received this rifle. And what I got on the other end of the phone was pretty much a company in complete turmoil. Or what appeared to have happened was the man that I contacted previously via email about sending this rifle in, it turns out he was pretty much the main guy in charge of all the warranty work there. And unfortunately, he suffered a heart attack during the time I sent this rifle to him. Thankfully, he was alive and he was just off on recovery. Unfortunately though, that company, which is the warranty center for Kel-Tec products here in Canada, appeared to have nobody else on staff that could cover for this guy. So the guy I had a hold of, he kind of stumbled around the back and with a lot of searching, he did manage to find this rifle sitting on a shelf. So they did receive it, but pretty much the package wasn't even opened. So they basically received the rifle, and they had, because this man had a heart attack, they hadn't been doing anything with the warranty claims that they were receiving. And unfortunately, they couldn't really give me a time frame as to when this man would be back working on these rifles again and what sort of time I'd be looking at before I would expect to see this rifle back, mailed back to me. So I had no choice but to play the waiting game, and it was only until later on into, I think, early fall or so, I bothered to contact the company once again. And when I got a hold of them, I got a hold of the manager, I believe, of the place, and it was the same thing. The man who had the heart attack was still kind of off on leave, but he was coming in occasionally to deal with emails and things like that, just small leak stuff, not actually dealing with the rifles. But the manager, whoever it was, he did confirm with me that they were expecting that guy to return back fairly shortly, and he was going to start resuming work on these rifles, and they were expecting to receive a shipment that fall of some updated uppers from Kel-Tec, I believe. So that kind of sounded promising, but once again I was waiting for this man with the heart attack to resume work. So I played the waiting game once again, and I didn't bother contacting the company this time up until December or so. And when I contacted the place in December, I did get a hold of the guy who had the heart attack, and he was very helpful. When I got a hold of him, he knew the rifle. He kind of had everything back in the works. However, they had not received any of those updated uppers. So, but he did tell me they were expecting to receive the shipment sometime around the new year, so like January or so. So, and he said once they received them, he would be basically sending me back exactly what the fixed version of what we sent him. So that was perfect. And he was a man of his word. Right around, well, I waited till the end of January because he said January. So I contacted him in the beginning of February, and they did in fact receive those rifles, and he was in the process of fixing this rifle, and he would have it shipped out to me right away. And that's exactly what happened. In the early weeks of February, I received this rifle back. So thankfully, in the case of this particular rifle, me and Laughman were plenty enough distracted by other rifles that this huge waiting time didn't exactly bother us. But if you were a person that sent this rifle away, and this was like your only 223 rifle, and you really counted on this thing coming back in a short amount of time, you would have been horribly disappointed by this experience. It is definitely unfortunate that this man had a heart attack, and of course nothing can control that really. But I still view it as a huge fail on this company's part, for the sense that they couldn't cover for the guy while he was gone, and also the amount of time it took to send up these replacement parts to fix these rifles is kind of ludicrous too. So basically, from the time I shipped this gun off to the time it came back, presumably resolved, we're going to get into that in a little bit, we're looking at about 7 months. 7 months to switch out a part on this rifle. That's it. Appearance-wise, the updated receiver on these updated uppers doesn't seem to be really any different than the original receiver that was on this firearm. The only really difference I've noticed is at the back here, where the hole is for the rear receiver pin. There does appear to be a wire kind of gimmick thing installed, and the wires are intended to engage with the detents in the rear receiver pin. So my guess is those are purely there to keep the receiver pin from backing out automatically. That's one of the issues that I brought up in that first video, is that when this receiver broke, this rear pin was protruding out the side of the gun, like it backed itself out on its own. So I presume those are addressing that issue. And looking at the footage from the first video, it appears that that receiver, the one that cracked, also had the cuts made in the plastic to accommodate that wire thing. So I really can't remember if that receiver from the factory came with this wire thing, and me and Laughman just at some point broke it or something and decided to pull it out, or if that particular receiver had the cutouts made but that wire was missing. I honestly can't remember. Like the warranty center and both Kel-Tec mentioned, pretty much all the updates done to these uppers was done in the gas system of the rifle. And the warranty center told me that it was to address reliability issues as well as the cracking of the receivers on these guns. However, I wanted to hear a second opinion from Kel-Tec themselves to see if their story jived with the warranty centers. And so I pretty much posed as a potential buyer of a SU16 to Kel-Tec. I didn't tell them that I owned one and that I had one break on me. And I just simply asked them, I hear you guys are doing updates to your uppers on the SUs. Why exactly are you doing that? And they got back to me right away and said that they were doing it purely to address the cracking of the receivers on the firearm. So that was very promising to me. That showed that Kel-Tec is acknowledging this issue as being a serious one, and they've made an update to purely address this, and they're not afraid to admit it to new customers and stuff. One of the issues, or what I pretty much stated in the first video, the rifles are basically overgassed. So what happens is on the original receivers, this this bolt carrier group would travel backwards, and to my finding, the only thing that keeps that bolt carrier group from impacting the rear of the receiver on the original receivers was the charging handle impacts this flat piece of the receiver right here at the back of the slot, and that's what keeps the bolt carrier group from traveling too far back. And those of you who watched the first video will notice that that particular receiver had this slot protrude past this flat point, and I don't believe it was like that when we first purchased it. I think that is a surefire sign that over time this charging handle was impacting this flat piece hard enough that it slowly deformed the material further and further back to the point that allowed the bolt carrier group to hit the rear, and that cracked the receiver. So, and this receiver, as you can clearly tell, does not have any deformation to that plastic. It's very much a flat piece. There isn't like a cross on the other receiver. So of course the first thing I did when I received this upper is I pulled the action back to see if this charging handle would still travel all the way to the rear and hit this. And unfortunately it does. So what I was hoping, that means that whatever modifications they did to this upper, they did not put in a stopper or something to actually stop the travel of this bolt carrier group. I was hoping they would. I was hoping they'd put some sort of metal stopper inside the gas system itself, so the piston would only travel so far back before it would hit that. But that does not appear to be the case. My guess is they might have changed the spring in the system, and my most likely guess is that they've just tweaked the gas porting on the fire to basically reduce the gassing that it has. Even though I could tell that this charging handle had the potential to hit the rear of the receiver, or the rear of the slot here, I wanted to make sure that it for sure was traveling that far back when the gun was actually firing. Because it's one thing to be able to pull it back that far. Obviously you have to pull it back that far to take out the pin in the first place, but it's a totally different thing for when the gun's actually firing, if indeed this charging handle goes that far back. So I wrapped tape around the receiver in just the right location to indicate that if the tape got torn or deformed in some way, that would indicate that this charging handle hit it, and that would mean that it comes very close to impacting the rear here. So I took it out to the range and I fired 10 rounds through it, and unfortunately the tape was deformed. It didn't tear the tape, but it put a dimple in the tape. So that indicates that even when the gun is firing with this updated upper, this charging handle is still traveling back far enough to hit this, which is also unfortunate. So it really makes you wonder, is this issue in fact resolved? And unfortunately for me, I can't really think of any other tests that could prove if it is right off the bat. Pretty much the only way I could see this proceeding forward is simply to take the gun out and start shooting it once again, and just keep an eye on this piece of plastic back here, and keep an eye out for it starting to deform. Because I guess the only hope left here is that, yes, maybe this charging handle with the updated upper does in fact hit this still when it's firing, but maybe it hits, by the time it reaches back here, it has such little momentum and force that it doesn't risk deforming this plastic. So there is that little bit of hope. I guess time will tell. Well, I think that pretty much sums up this video. I hope many of you found it very helpful. And my final advice to you, those of you out there that own one of these firearms who are concerned that your receiver might have this same issue, would be to check the rear of that charging handle slot on your receiver and just check for any deformation in the plastic. If your receiver is starting to look like the one I featured in the previous video, and this slot area here looks more like a cross than just a T, I would take that as a very serious sign that your receiver is destined to fail, just like the original one on this rifle did. So I guess that's all. Take care and see you next time.
Stand by. grab your shotgun.